The colony of Haven 3 was not a famous place. It was a small outpost. Far from the busy trade routes of the galaxy, ships rarely landed there, except for merchants and travelers looking for rest. The people of Haven 3 lived simple lives, farming, mining, and trading. Among them was a human doctor named Rami. Rami was not a warrior, not a soldier, and not an explorer. He was a man who believed in healing and saving lives. His clinic was small, with only a few machines and medicines, but people trusted him. He never turned anyone away. Miners with broken arms, children with fevers, and old farmers with weak hearts all came to him. He worked quietly, never expecting fame. But fate had other plans. One warm evening, just as Rami was closing his clinic, the sound of heavy footsteps shook the ground outside. He stepped out and saw a group of tall alien soldiers marching toward him. Their armor shone silver, marked with the royal crest of Velora, a proud alien kingdom. At their center was a figure wrapped in cloth, carried on a floating bed. The soldiers stopped in front of him. "Are you the human healer?" one soldier demanded. Rami nodded carefully. "Yes, I am Dr. Rami. Who is this patient?" The soldier's voice was sharp but heavy with worry. "The Princess of Velora. She is dying. Our healers cannot save her. You must try." Rami's heart raced. A princess in his small clinic. He had treated many patients, but never royalty. Never someone whose life could decide the fate of kingdoms. He looked at the young figure on the bed. Her skin was pale blue, her breathing shallow. Her eyes closed. She looked fragile, like a flower fading under the sun. "I will do my best," Rami said calmly. His voice carried no pride, only duty. The soldiers moved her into the clinic. The room suddenly felt too small, too humble for such an important guest. The machines hummed. The lights glowed faintly, and Rami prepared his instruments. The soldiers stood close, watching his every move. Their hands rested on their weapons, as if warning him, "Fail, and you will pay." Rami ignored their stares. He checked the princess's pulse, her breathing, her skin temperature. He studied her carefully, writing notes in his old notebook. He had treated many humans, but alien biology was always a challenge. Yet he had learned one thing over the years, though bodies looked different. Life itself was the same. Blood flowed, hearts beat, and lungs breathed. Pain and sickness cared little for race or kingdom. Still, this illness was strange. The princess's body showed signs of infection, but his scanner could not identify the cause. Her lungs rattled. Her skin burned with fever, but her pulse was weak, as if her energy was fading away. Rami frowned. He had seen something like this before, an old Earth disease that no one feared anymore. But here it was, striking an alien princess. One soldier, restless, growled, "Why do you waste time? Do something? Our best healers failed, and you stand. They're writing in your human paper." Rami looked up calmly. "If you want me to save her, let me work in my way. Healing is not about rushing. It is about understanding." The soldier fell silent, though his eyes burned with anger. Hours passed. Rami tried simple treatments, first cooling the fever, supporting her breathing, and giving her fluids. He worked with steady hands, his mind sharp with focus. The soldiers whispered among themselves, doubting. Some shook their heads, saying it was hopeless. But one soldier, older than the rest, watched Rami with quiet respect. He saw not panic, not fear, but determination in the human's eyes. Late into the night, the door of the clinic burst open. A tall, majestic figure entered, the king of Velora himself. His presence filled the small room. His skin glowed with golden markings. His crown shone with jewels, and his eyes burned like fire. The soldiers bowed deeply, but Rami continued his work. The princess's life mattered more than ceremony. The king's voice thundered, though it trembled with fear. "Human, my daughter lies at death's door. If you fail, no star will hide you from my wrath." Rami did not look up. He was cleaning the princess's airway, helping her breathe easier. "If I fear your wrath more than her life, I cannot save her. Please, give me time." The room froze. No one had ever spoken to the king in such a way. The soldiers tensed, expecting the king to strike the human down. but instead, the king stared at Rami, his anger meeting the calm strength of the doctor. Slowly, the king nodded. Then do as you must, but know this: if she dies, so will you? Rami finally looked up, his eyes steady. If she dies, I do not deserve to live. But if she lives, you will see what humans can do. The king said nothing more, but he stayed in the corner, watching. For the first time, the fate of a kingdom rested not in battle, not in diplomacy, but in the hands of a quiet human doctor. In a small clinic, the night stretched on. Rami worked tirelessly, moving between his tools, his medicines, and the princess. Sweat covered his face, but his hands never shook. He remembered his teacher's words long ago. A healer's strength is not in force, but in patience. Life is not won by speed, but by care. Finally, as dawn broke, the princess's breathing grew steadier. Her fever did not vanish, but it no longer burned so fiercely. Her lips moved faintly, whispering a word in her alien tongue. The king's eyes widened. She calls for me. Rami stepped back, his voice soft. She is not safe yet, but she fights, and I will fight with her. The king stared at him in silence. The soldiers, once doubtful, now watched. With a fragile human in a small clinic had done what no healer of Valora could do. He had given the princess a chance to live. And so began the story of a human doctor whose quiet strength would shake the stars. Morning light entered through the clinic window, painting the room in a soft glow. Rami rubbed his tired eyes. He had worked the whole night, yet he could not rest. The princess's life still hung by a thin thread. The alien princess lay on the bed, her breathing slow but more stable than before. Her skin was still pale blue, and the fever had not fully left her. The king stood by her side, his golden-marked face heavy with worry. Around them, soldiers kept watch, their armor gleaming in the morning light. Rami checked her pulse again. It was weak, but it had not faded. He looked at the king and said, "She has survived the night. That is a good sign, but she is not safe. Yet, the illness inside her is strange. It is not something your healers could know." One soldier, the youngest of the group, shook his head and muttered, "Why should a human know what we cannot? Our kingdom has healers with wisdom older than his entire race." Rami heard the words but did not react with anger. He only adjusted the princess's blanket and spoke calmly. Because sometimes wisdom is not about age. It is about seeing what others overlook. The king's sharp eyes narrowed. "What do you mean, human?" Rami took a deep breath and began to explain. "Her illness reminds me of something that once harmed my own people on Earth, long ago, before we reached the stars. A sickness spread through villages. It weakened the lungs, burned the body with fever, and slowly drained the life away. We learn how to fight it with medicine, patience, and care. What I see here is very close to that same sickness, but in her alien form." The king's brow furrowed. He was a proud ruler, yet his fear for his daughter made him listen. "You say humans have seen this before, that you know how to defeat it." Rami nodded slowly. "I believe so, but the cure is not instant. It takes time, and in that time, she will look weaker before she grows stronger. That is why your healers failed. They did not understand the patience required. They tried to erase the sickness at once, and in doing so, they harmed her more." The soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. Some still doubted, but the king raised a hand. Silencing them, he turned back to Rami. "Then tell me what you need." Rami looked around his small clinic. His tools were limited, his medicines few, yet he had always made do with what he had. He said, "I will need fresh water, herbs from your world, and time. Most of all, I need no interruption. If I begin this treatment, I must continue without fear of being stopped." The king studied him for a long moment. Finally, he nodded. "You shall have what you ask. But remember, human, if you play with her life, I will end yours." Rami bowed his head slightly. "If she dies, I will not argue. But I do not intend for her to die." The day passed slowly. Rami worked beside the princess without rest. He mixed medicines using both human knowledge and alien herbs the soldiers brought him. He cooled her fever with wet cloths, helped her breathed by clearing her airway, and gave her small drops of medicine that soothed her lungs. The princess sometimes stirred, whispering faint words in her language. The king leaned close each time, his face softening. Though Rami did not understand her words, he understood the meaning she wanted to live. The soldiers remained tense, but the older one who had watched Rami in silence now spoke. I have seen many healers panic when they cannot fix an illness. Quickly, this human does not panic. He works as if time itself obeys his hands. The younger soldier scoffed, or he pretends calmness because he knows failure is near. The older soldier's eyes hardened, perhaps. But look at the king's daughter, her breathing is not as shallow as before. Something is changing, even. The king, though still full of worry, could see it. His daughter no longer looked close to death, though her illness was far from gone. Hope, faint as a candle in the dark, had entered the room. That night, Rami sat on a chair near the bed, still awake, still watching. The king approached him. For the first time, his voice was not thunder but quiet. Human, why do you do this? You do not know us. You owe us nothing. Yet you spend your strength for her. Rami looked at the princess, then back at the king. Because a life is a life. When someone is dying and I have the chance to help, I cannot turn away. I am a doctor. That is my duty, whether human or alien, rich or poor, king or farmer. The king's sharp eyes softened with something almost like respect. Strange, in my court. Many serve for power, for wealth, or for honor. You serve only for life itself. Perhaps that is why your hands succeed where others fail. Rami did not answer. He only checked the princess's temperature again and adjusted her medicine. His silence spoke more than words. On the third day, the illness grew worse before it grew better. The princess coughed heavily, her body shaking with weakness. The younger soldier lost patience. Enough! You are killing her with this waiting. Let the royal healers take over before it is too late. He reached for the princess. But Rami stood firmly in his path. His tired eyes were steady, his voice calm but unyielding. If you touch her now, you will end her life. This stage must pass. It is part of the sickness leaving the body. If you break the treatment now, all hope will be lost. The room filled with tension. The young soldier's hand tightened on his weapon. The king's voice cut through the silence. Like a blade. Stand down. The soldier froze. The king's gaze was hard as stone. You heard the doctor. If my daughter's life lies in his hands, then so be it. I will not watch her die because of your doubt. The soldier lowered his weapon. His face red with anger, but he obeyed. Rami bowed his head slightly in thanks to the king, then returned to his work. That night, when the fever finally began to break, the princess's lips curved into the faintest smile. Her breathing, though still heavy, was steadier than it had been since her arrival. The king's eyes glistened, and for the first time, the heavy air of fear lifted slightly. The older soldier whispered, almost in disbelief, the human may truly succeed. Rami allowed himself a small sigh of relief, yet he knew the battle was not over. The illness was retreating, but the princess's strength was weak. Her body would need more care. More patience died as the stars rose above Haven 3. The king looked at Rami and said, perhaps, human, perhaps your people hold more power than we imagined. Rami only replied softly, not power, your majesty, just care, and sometimes care is stronger than power. The third sunrise since the princess had been brought to Rami's small clinic cast its soft light over Haven 3. The quiet settlement outside was beginning another ordinary day. But inside the little clinic, the atmosphere was heavy with tension. The princess still lay on her bed, her breathing shallow but steady. Her fever had broken during the night, yet her body remained weak. Every cough shook her fragile frame, and every sigh of breath seemed like a battle won. Rami had not left her side. His clothes were wrinkled, his face pale from sleepless nights. But his eyes never left the patient. His notebook, filled with human sketches and notes, sat on the table beside him. He wrote every small change, every rise and fall of her temperature, every strength and weakness in her breathing. The king watched silently, his tall frame standing by the door. His golden-marked face was tense, but he said nothing. The The soldiers stood in a line behind him, their eyes sharp, their hands resting on their weapons. They were guardians, but also judges, waiting to see if the human would fail or succeed. At midday, the younger soldier, who had doubted Rami from the start, stepped forward again. His voice was harsh, filled with frustration. She does not improve quickly enough. Our healers could surround her with machines, give her the most powerful cures of Valora. Why do we let this human delay with cloths and herbs? Rami looked up from his work. His voice was calm, though his exhaustion showed. Because your machines treat only what they understand. This illness is different. It will not vanish by force. It must be guided out slowly, with patience. The soldier scowled. Patience, every breath she takes could be her last. And you? Speak of patience. The king's voice cut through the air like steel. Enough. The human saved her through the night when all others failed. I will not hear your doubt again. The soldier bowed stiffly, though his eyes still burned with anger. Rami said nothing more. He returned to his work, changing the princess's bandages and checking her lungs with his simple stethoscope. The sound was faint but improving, slowly. Steadily, the sickness was losing its grip. Hours passed in silence. The princess stirred, her eyes half opening for the first time. They were a deep silver, glowing faintly in the light. Her lips moved, whispering a weak word in her language. The king leaned close, his face softening with emotion. She calls. For me, he murmured. Rami gave a small nod. It means her mind is waking. She fights to live. The king's eyes filled with hope, but the younger soldier spoke again, his voice sharp. Or it is her final breath before the end. The king turned his head, his gaze like fire. Silence. The soldier closed his mouth, though bitterness lingered in his eyes. That night, the clinic was quiet except for the sound of the princess's breathing. The king sat by her bed, holding her hand, while Rami prepared another dose of medicine. The air smelled faintly of herbs and warm water. At last, the king spoke, his voice lower than before. Human, tell me truth. Can you save her fully? Rami paused. He looked at the king, then at the princess. I cannot promise what I cannot control, but I believe she will live. Her body is strong, even if it is weak now. She only needs time. The king studied him closely. Most who stand before me would fill my ears with promises, even false ones, yet you speak with honesty, even if it displeases me. Rami placed the cup of medicine on the table. Honesty is part of healing. Your Majesty, lies do not cure. For a moment, silence hung in the room. Then the king gave a slow nod, as though accepting this unusual truth. But peace did not last. Near dawn, the princess began to cough violently, her body trembling. The soldiers rushed forward, their eyes wide with fear. The young soldier cried out, "She is dying. Your trust in this human is madness." He reached for his weapon, his rage boiling. I will not watch her suffer for his pride. But before he could move further, the older soldier stepped into his path. His deep voice rumbled like a mountain. Stand back. Look carefully. Her body is not failing, it is fighting. The younger soldier snarled. You protect him because you are blind. The older soldier's gaze was firm. No, I protect him because I see something you do not. Look at her eyes. They are not empty. She fights because he helps her fight. The king's voice thundered, silencing both. Enough. I command it. The younger soldier froze, breathing heavily, but he lowered his weapon. He looked at Rami with hatred, yet he obeyed. Rami never stopped working. He helped the princess sit up slightly, patting her back gently to ease her cough. He gave her water, supporting her like a fragile child. His hands never shook, even as her coughs echoed in the small room. Slowly, the coughing eased, her breathing steadied, and she lay back down, exhausted but alive. The king released a breath he had been holding, his eyes, sharp as blades, softened as he looked at Rami. You were right again, human. She is not breaking, she is fighting. Rami only nodded, too tired for pride. The sickness leaves her slowly. Each cough takes it farther away. She must endure, and so must we. Later, when the clinic grew quiet again, the older soldier approached. Rami, His voice was low, respectful. "Human doctor, I have seen warriors on the battlefield. Many claim to be fearless, but in truth, most tremble inside. Yet you, even with death at your side, you do not falter. Why?" Rami looked at him, his tired face calm. "Because fear does not heal. If I let it guide my hands, I would fail. A healer must carry calmness, even when he feels none." The older soldier nodded slowly, as if learning a lesson he had never known. Days turned into nights, and nights into days. Each moment was a battle in silence. The princess weakened, then grew stronger, then weakened again. Rami never left her side. The king, though ruler of a vast kingdom, stayed near his daughter, watching the human work. The soldiers, once filled with doubt, began to see what patience and care could do. And though no grand speeches were made, and no weapons clashed, a quiet truth began to grow in their hearts. This human, with his small clinic and simple tools, was showing them a strength greater than power, the strength to fight death not with swords, but with steady hands and unyielding hope. The nights on Haven 3 were quiet, but inside Rami's small clinic, silence carried weight. Each breath of the princess was a fragile thread holding the balance between life and death. The king remained close, his royal cloak heavy upon his shoulders. Yet he refused to leave. His soldiers stood guard, their armor reflecting the soft glow of the lamps. Rami had now spent several days without rest. His face showed deep lines of exhaustion, but his hands never wavered. He worked with quiet focus, guiding the princess through every step of recovery. He had seen many patients in his life, but never one whose every heartbeat carried the fate of a kingdom. That night, the princess grew restless again. Her breaths were uneven, her chest rising and falling in sharp waves. Rami's heart tightened. He recognized them. Pattern, this was the turning point. If she endured, she would live. If not, nothing could save her. The king saw it too. His golden-marked face turned pale. He leaned forward, gripping the side of the bed with strength that came from fear. "Human," he whispered, his voice trembling, though he tried to sound firm. "Tell me the truth. Is this the end?" Rami placed his stethoscope against the princess's chest, listening carefully. Then he looked at the king, his voice calm but steady. "No, Majesty. This is the storm. Before the calm, if we hold on, if she holds on, she will breathe freely again." The king stared at him, torn between doubt and hope. "And if you are wrong," Rami met his eyes without fear, "then she will die, but not because we gave up, because her body could not fight longer. But I believe she will fight." The soldiers watched in silence, their eyes flickering between their king and the human doctor. The younger soldier, always doubtful, whispered bitterly, "He risks her. Life on belief." The older soldier beside him replied softly, "And yet, belief is what keeps her alive." The princess suddenly coughed violently, her body shaking with weakness. Her breath seemed to vanish, and for a moment, the room froze. In terror, the king's voice cracked. "She is slipping away." Rami acted quickly. He lifted the princess gently, supporting her back, and pressed against her chest in a steady rhythm, guiding her lungs to work again. He spoke softly, his voice calm, as though speaking to the princess herself. "Breathe. Do not give up. You are stronger than this." The king stepped forward, his voice breaking with emotion. "Daughter, hear me. Your people wait for you. Do not leave me now." The princess's lips parted slightly, a faint sound escaping her throat. Her silver eyes opened just a little, glowing dimly in the lamplight. She gasped, then drew in a deep, steady breath. The king froze. The soldiers gasped. Even Rami, steady as always, allowed himself a breath of relief. It was the first deep breath she had taken since she arrived. Minutes passed, then hours. Her coughing lessened, her breathing steadied. Each rise and fall of her chest grew stronger, fuller. Rami continued to watch her carefully, checking her pulse, adjusting her medicine. Slowly, a faint color returned to her skin, no longer pale and lifeless, but warmer, brighter. The king could not take his eyes off her. He reached out and touched her hand, whispering words only a father could speak. His shoulders shook, and though he was a ruler of worlds, he wept softly beside her bed. The soldiers bowed their heads, silence filling the room. None dared to disturb the moment. Finally, the king turned to Rami, his voice heavy with gratitude and disbelief. You have done what none of my healers could. You gave her life again. Rami's tired eyes softened. I only helped her body fight. The strength was hers. She chose to live. The king shook his head. No, human, it was your hands, your patience, your calmness that carried her through. Without you, my daughter would now lie in silence. The next morning, word spread quickly through Haven 3. The Princess of Valora, once believed to be dying, had taken breath again. The soldiers, once doubtful, now looked at the human doctor with awe. The older soldier spoke openly, his voice firm. The human has the hands of light. We owe him more than words. Even the younger soldier, though still proud, could not hide the truth. He muttered, Perhaps humans are not as weak as I thought. Rami ignored their praise. He was not there for honor or glory. His work was not yet done. He still monitored the princess closely, ensuring her recovery continued. But inside, he felt a quiet satisfaction. Each breath she took was proof that his belief had not been in vain. Later that day, the princess opened her eyes fully for the first time. Her silver gaze moved across the room, landing on her father, then on Rami. She spoke faintly, her voice soft like a whisper. Father, I live. The king gripped her hand tightly, tears shining in his eyes. Yes, my daughter, you live because of him. He turned, pointing toward Rami. The princess's eyes moved to the human doctor. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. Thank you, healer. Rami bowed his head gently. Rest now. Words can wait until you are strong again. Her eyes closed once more, but not in weakness this time, in peaceful rest. That evening, the king called Rami aside. The air outside the clinic was cool, the stars above shining like endless candles. The king's voice was no longer filled with threat or command, but with respect. Human, you have saved not only my daughter, but also my kingdom. If she had died, war would have spread, for many would seek to blame, and many would seek revenge. But now, hope lives again. Valora will not forget what you have done. Rami bowed his head. Majesty, I did not do this for kingdoms or power. I did this because a life is worth saving. The king studied him carefully, his golden eyes deep with thought. Strange are your people, humans. You are fragile compared to us, yet you hold a strength that is not seen in battle, but in care. Perhaps there is more to your kind than we believe. Rami only replied quietly, Sometimes healing is the greatest strength. That night, as the princess slept peacefully for the first time in many days, the king stood outside the clinic, gazing at the stars. His heart was heavy with gratitude and wonder. A single thought echoed in his mind: the galaxy will remember this human. The morning sun rose gently over Haven 3, casting golden light across the small colony. For the first time in many days, the clinic was quiet inside. The Princess of Valora slept peacefully, her breathing calm and steady. The fever that had once gripped her body was gone. Her cheeks, once pale, now held a faint glow of life. The king stood by her bedside, silent and still. His tall frame looked less heavy than before, as though a great burden had been lifted. The soldiers who guarded the room allowed themselves small smiles, though their discipline kept them straight and firm. And in the corner, sitting with his worn notebook, was the human doctor, Rami. His eyes were heavy with exhaustion, but his heart was light. He had fought through sleepless nights, endless worry, and the weight of doubt. Now, seeing the princess alive, he knew it had all been worth it. Later that day, when the princess opened her eyes again, the room filled with joy. Her silver gaze met her father's, and she whispered, I feel stronger. The king bent close, his deep voice shaking with emotion. Yes, my daughter, stronger because this human gave you back your life. The princess turned her gaze toward Rami. She smiled faintly, her voice soft. Then I owe him more than words can ever repay. Rami bowed slightly. You owe me nothing. To see you live is enough. But the king, ruler of Velora, did not agree. He rose to his full height, his golden markings shining in the sunlight that streamed through the window. His voice filled the clinic with power. No, human, my bloodline carries the crown of Velora. You have saved the heart of this kingdom. Gold, jewels, and land are too little for what you have done. You shall be given a reward beyond such things. The soldiers murmured, exchanging uneasy glances. Rewards of gold and treasure were common. But the king's words carried a weight that suggested something far greater. The younger soldier, always doubtful, frowned. Majesty, to grant more than riches to an outsider, especially a human, is dangerous. Our people will not accept it. But the older soldier shook his head. Dangerous or not, the human has done what none of us could. If saving the princess does not deserve honor, then what does? The king silenced them both with a gesture. His gaze remained fixed on Rami. When my daughter can walk again, I will hold a gathering. There, before my court, I will grant you a title no outsider has ever held. You will become part of Velora's royal bond. The room went silent. Even Rami's hands froze. The royal bond was not simply an award. It was a sacred honor, a tie to the royal family itself. To grant it to an alien was unheard of. The younger soldier spoke again, his voice sharp. Majesty, with respect, the people will not understand. They will say it dishonors Velora's blood. The king's voice grew firm, like thunder rolling across the mountains. Then they will learn that honor is not only born of blood. It can also be earned by action. And this human has earned more than all the treasures of our vaults. Rami finally spoke, his voice humble. Your Majesty, I am only a doctor. I did not do this for reward. I did it because life is precious, no matter whose it is. The king looked at him, his golden eyes deep with thought. And that is exactly why you deserve the bond. You yield not for power, but for compassion. That strength is greater than any weapon. News spread quickly across Haven 3 and beyond. Messengers carried the word to Velora's homeworld, and from there, it traveled across the stars. The human doctor saved the princess. The king himself will reward him with the royal bond. Across the galaxy, whispers began. Some races were astonished. Others were outraged. In distant courts, alien leaders debated. Some said, if humans can heal what we cannot, perhaps they are more dangerous than we thought. Others said, if a single human can earn the bond, perhaps we should seek friendship with their kind. Not all were pleased. There were rulers who envied Velora and feared what this new bond could mean. If humans could rise so high in the eyes of a great king, what would stop them from rising higher still? Meanwhile, the princess grew stronger each day. She walked slowly across the clinic floor, her father watching proudly. She often looked to Rami with gratitude in her eyes, speaking to him in soft tones. She asked about Earth, about humans, and about his work as a healer. Rami answered simply, always with the same calm manner. He did not speak of glory or conquest. He only spoke of helping the weak, of healing the sick, and of how small acts of care could change lives. The princess listened closely, her respect for the human doctor growing with each word. One evening, as the stars glittered above Haven 3, the king spoke to Rami in private. You must understand, human, the king said, his voice low but heavy. To grant you the royal bond is not only a gift, it is also a test. There are many who will oppose this. Some will try to dishonor you. Others may even wish you harm. Yet I give it to you because you have shown me a strength I did not believe humans had. If you accept, your life will never be the same. Rami thought for a long moment. Then he answered, Majesty, I did not ask for this. I am only a healer. But if this honor can help your people, if it can build trust between humans and Velora, then I will accept it. Not for myself, but for the chance to show that our kind can bring life, not only war. The king studied him in silence, then placed a hand on his shoulder. Then, Rami of Earth, you will be remembered not only as a doctor, but as the first outsider to become part of Velora's royal circle. The day of the gathering drew near. The palace on Velora's homeworld prepared for a ceremony unlike any other. Nobles from across the kingdom would attend, many with curiosity, some with resentment. The galaxy itself would be watching. and at the center of it all would stand Rami, the human doctor who had saved the princess and, without seeking it, had begun to change how the stars saw his people. The news of the king's decision spread like fire among dry leaves. Every corner of Velora's empire now buzzed with voices about the human doctor. Some spoke with awe, others with suspicion, and many with anger. In the shining halls of the royal palace, preparations for the great ceremony began. Servants decorated the wide chambers with banners of gold and deep blue, the sacred colors of Velora's crown. Guards stood in every corridor, their armor polished to a mirror shine. The whole palace seemed to breathe with tension. But while the palace shone with beauty, the air outside was heavy with debate. Crowds gathered in the capital city. Some citizens carried flowers to honor the princess's healing. Others shouted in protest. "Why should a human hold the royal bond?" cried one voice. "He is not of Velora's blood," shouted another. Yet others answered back, "He saved her life." That is greater than blood. The people were divided, and the galaxy itself was watching. Inside the palace, the princess walked slowly beside her father. Though still regaining her full strength, she moved with dignity. Each step she took was a victory over death itself. She looked up at her father. "Do you think the people will accept this, father?" The king's golden eyes softened. "In time, yes. They fear what is new, what is different, but hearts can change when they see truth. They will see that this human is worthy." The princess smiled faintly. "I believe they already see it. They just do not wish to admit it." Rami, the doctor, prepared in a small guest chamber. He wore no crown, no armor, only a simple robe of white and silver given to him by the palace. He looked at himself in the polished metal mirror. For a moment, he felt out of place. "This is not who I am," he whispered to himself. "I am only a healer." Yet deep inside, he knew the moment was bigger than him. This was not only about saving one life. It was about showing what humans could be in the vast sea of stars. The day of the ceremony arrived, the grand hall of Velora's palace filled with nobles, lords, and leaders from distant worlds. Their garments sparkled with jewels, their voices hummed with curiosity and judgment. High above, banners hung with the royal crest, a star entwined with a crown. The king entered first, his robe flowing like firelight. The nobles bowed low. Then the princess appeared, radiant and alive, walking with strength that brought gasps from the hall. And finally, Rami entered. His steps were calm, though his heart beat fast. He could feel 1,000 eyes on him, some admiring, others cold. Whispers followed him as he walked to the center of the hall. "That is the human? He looks so ordinary. Perhaps that is what makes him dangerous." Rami heard them all, but he kept his gaze steady. The king raised his hand, and silence fell. His voice carried across the hall, deep and commanding. "My people, today you see with your own eyes the truth that words cannot deny. My daughter lives because of this human. When our healers failed, when even our machines could not save her, his hands and his will brought her back. For this, I shall grant him the royal bond." The nobles shifted uneasily. Some nodded in respect. Others frowned in disapproval. The younger soldier, now standing guard by the doors, clenched his jaw. He had spoken against this reward before, and still his heart resisted it. He whispered under his breath, "A human does not belong here." But the older soldier beside him replied, "Look at the princess. She is alive. That is what matters." The ceremony began. A sacred staff, carved with symbols of the Veloran crown, was brought forth. It glowed faintly as it was placed in the king's hands. The king turned to Rami. "Kneel." Rami knelt slowly on the shining floor. His robe brushed against the polished stone, and he bowed his head. The king spoke the ancient words of the bond. "By life saved, by duty fulfilled, by honor given, I bind this human, Rami of Earth, to the bloodline of Velora. From this day forth, he is not only a healer, but a guardian of our line." The staff touched Rami's shoulders, then rested above his head. A ripple of golden light spread across the hall. The nobles gasped, some bowed their heads. Others looked away with anger. The royal bond had been sealed. The princess stepped forward. She placed her hand gently on Rami's shoulder. Rise, guardian of Valora. Rami rose, his face calm but his heart heavy with the weight of the moment. He did not feel like a guardian. He still felt like a doctor. Yet when he looked into the princess's eyes, he saw trust, and when he looked at the king, he saw respect. The hall erupted with mixed voices. Some cheered, shouting praise for the king's wisdom. Others muttered bitterly, their eyes sharp with doubt, far beyond the palace walls. Across the stars, other rulers watched through their crystal screens. One whispered, "The king of Valora ties his house to a human. This is dangerous." Another said, "No, this is wise. Perhaps humans are more than we thought." And in shadowed corners of the galaxy, enemies of Valora plotted, "If the human rises too high, we must bring him down." After the ceremony, the king met Rami in private. His golden eyes were steady. "You carry this honor now, but it is also a burden. Many will see you as a threat. You must be ready." Rami answered quietly, "I did not ask for this, Majesty, but I will not run from it. If this can bring peace between humans and your people, I will carry it." The king nodded. "Then you are already stronger than most nobles in this hall." That night, while the city celebrated with lights and songs, the palace guards discovered a message left in the shadows. It was carved into the wall near the gates. Written in a language of enemies long thought silent, it read, "The bond must be broken. The human must fall." The younger soldier found it first. His hands tightened on his spear as he read the words. He whispered, "So it begins." The king was warned at once, and the palace doubled its guard. But in the quiet of his chamber, Rami sat by the window, looking at the stars. He did not fear the threats. He only wondered how a doctor, who once healed in a small colony clinic, had now become a symbol that could change the fate of entire worlds. And somewhere in the dark corners of space, unseen enemies gathered their strength. For them, this was not just about one man or one princess. This was about power, pride, and the fear of what humans might become. The ceremony was only the beginning. The city of Valora glowed with lights that night. The skies were filled with shining drones carrying ribbons of silver and blue, while people sang in the streets. Fireworks bloomed like stars above the capital, celebrating the new bond between the royal line and the human healer. But in the hidden corners, shadows moved. Not everyone celebrated. The message carved on the palace wall had already spread among the guards. The bond must be broken. The human must fall. Inside his chamber, Rami could not sleep. He sat near the wide crystal window, gazing at the stars. The ceremony still echoed in his mind. The voices, the light, the king's words, it felt like a dream. But dreams faded, and he knew danger was real. He whispered to himself, "I did not come here for crowns or bonds. I came here to heal. If enemies strike, I must still be who I am." The door opened softly. The princess stepped inside, her gown flowing like water. "You are awake," she said gently. "Yes," Rami replied with a small smile. "Too much in my mind." She sat near him. "I can feel it too. Something is coming. The people outside sing, but the air carries a weight, as if the stars themselves hold their breath." Rami nodded. "Your life was saved, but now many lives may be at risk. This reward has made me more than a doctor, and some will not forgive that." The princess looked at him with steady eyes. "Then we will face it together. You healed me when others could not. Now I will stand with you when others will not." Her words gave him strength. The danger came sooner than expected. Before dawn, alarms rang across the palace. The wall shook with the impact of explosives. Smoke filled the sky as enemy raiders broke through the outer defenses. They were not ordinary rebels. Their armor was black, and their weapons hummed with strange energy. They had come from the far side of the galaxy, from a rival empire that long despised Valora's crown. And they had one goal: kill the human who now stood beside the royal line. The king was rushed to the throne room under heavy guard. The princess was brought there too. But Rami refused to hide behind the throne. He told the guards, "I will not run. If they want me, then let me face them. But I will not be the reason your people suffer in silence." The older soldier who once doubted him placed a hand on his shoulder. "You are brave, human. But bravery without wisdom can cost lives," Rami answered firmly. "And wisdom without courage can lose everything." The soldier smiled for the first time. "Then perhaps you are one of us now." The palace shook again as raiders stormed through the gates. The younger soldier, still filled with doubt, looked at Rami with cold eyes. "If you were not here, none of this would happen." Rami did not answer in anger. He only said, "Perhaps. But if I were not here, your princess would be gone. Decide what matters more." The younger soldier fell silent. The raiders reached the throne room at last. Their leader, cloaked in dark metal, stepped forward. His voice was harsh. "Velora's king, surrender the human. Break the bond, and we will leave your world in peace." The king rose, his crown gleaming in the torchlight. "You will have nothing. The bond stands." The raider laughed. "Then your empire will burn." He raised his weapon. The guards stepped forward, but Rami also moved. He stood between the raiders and the royal family, his robe still white though. Dust and smoke darkened the air. "I am the one you came for," Rami said. "Then take me. But leave them." The hall froze in silence. The raiders hesitated. They had expected fear, not calm resolve. The leader narrowed his eyes. "You would give yourself so easily?" Rami spoke clearly. "I am a healer. I save lives, not end them. If my life can protect these people, then I will give it. That is my choice." The princess stepped forward quickly, standing beside him. "And I choose to stand with him. If you take him, you take me too." Gasps filled the hall. The nobles whispered in shock. The raiders' eyes burned with anger. The king raised his hand. "Enough. You think you can break us with threats. But you do not understand. The bond has made us stronger, not weaker. You see a human as small, fragile, but I see him as proof that honor is greater than blood." At that moment, the soldiers of Velora rallied. The older soldier shouted, "For the king, for the princess, for the guardian of Velora." The guards charged, their spears glowing. Battle filled the hall. The clash of metal and the roar of energy weapons shook the walls. Rami was pulled back by the princess, but he refused to leave. He grabbed a fallen staff and used it not as a weapon, but to shield the princess from flying blasts. Though he was not a warrior, his will was unshaken. The younger soldier, seeing this, finally understood. He fought fiercely beside Rami, protecting him. "Forgive me, human," he shouted. "I was blind. You are no stranger. You are one of us." The fight raged, but slowly the raiders were pushed back. The king himself fought with his glowing blade, his presence like a storm. The nobles, who once doubted, now joined the defense. Together they drove the raiders from the palace. At last, the dark leader fell, struck down by the united strength of Velora's people. His army fled into the skies, broken and defeated. The palace stood in ruins, but the bond of trust stood stronger than ever after the battle. The hall was silent except for the crackle of smoke. The king turned to Rami. His golden eyes were proud. "You gave yourself without fear. You stood where even warriors trembled. This is the meaning of the bond. This is the unusual reward you carry, not power, not wealth, but the trust of a people who once doubted you." The princess placed her hand over Rami's. "You saved me, and now you have saved us all. Velora will never forget." Rami bowed his head. "I only did what any healer should do, to protect life, to stand for what is right. If that is my reward, I accept it." The nobles knelt one by one, their doubts erased. The younger soldier knelt too, tears in his eyes. "Guardian of Velora," he said, "forgive my foolish heart." Rami lifted him up. "There is nothing to forgive. We all learn, one step at a time." The people of Velora sang once more, but this time it was not only for their princess. It was for the human who had shown them that courage was not bound by race or blood, but by choice. And across the galaxy, other worlds watched in silence. Some feared, some admired, but none could deny that the name of one human doctor had changed history. He had come to heal. Instead, he had become a symbol, and though he wore no crown, Though he carried no sword, Rami had earned something greater, the bond of a world, the respect of a king, and the eternal gratitude of a princess whose life had once slipped away. This was his unusual reward. This was human heroics.